Good morning. Welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and today is the 6th of October. To kind of remember what day it is. It is a Sunday, and it's quite early. I don't know how many people will join me today because it's, oh, and there's Joanne. Good morning, Joanne. Up early on a Sunday. Actually, you sent me a DM earlier, so yeah, it's. I guess I know you were up. And we'll see who else joins today. For class tonight, I haven't good morning, Sam, or good afternoon, Sam. I still haven't sent out my brain's not working. I haven't sent out the link for tonight's class yet for intuitive development for people who are involved with that. So I'm going to send that out after this live stream, probably. And I don't know. I don't remember if you joined this week, Joanne, or not. I don't remember if you did, but I have to go back and look. But yeah, I'll be sending that out this morning. And oh my God, you have to. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's okay. There's still a chance to do that. And then I'm going to send the link out this morning for everybody. So, so I'll make sure that you get that. Okay, so yeah, beautiful morning, cold. I have the heat on, and actually this is the first time I opened the window and my window just fogged up right away. I was like, okay, that's a sign that it's too cold out. We are getting more towards, good morning, Pat. We are getting more towards this November type weather, even though we're in October. And I don't necessarily mind. I kind of like this time of year. It's chilly, but it's still not too cold. It's not so cold that, it's like unbearably, you can't stand outside for more than a few minutes. You got to go back in, So I'm very much enjoying this morning and this weather. Okay, so one thing I was going to, today's kind of a busy day for me. And foggy here and 40s. Okay, yeah, I didn't check the temp today, but there was frost on the grass, so I'm thinking it's a little bit colder. It was, like I said, I have a very busy day. I've got the house to get clean. I've been working on tarot readings. I'm doing Aries through Virgo, and those are going to be up. They should be up on time, actually, because I'm going to do the last 3 this morning. I got to finish cleaning the house. I have a client at 1, and then we have class at 4. So it's a busy day today. And tomorrow, as I mentioned, I don't know if everybody caught this, I'm not going to be doing the live stream tomorrow morning because I have to go pick up my car from the body shop really early. Like, they want me at the rental car place to return my car by like 8:15 or something. And I'm like, it's just not enough time between the end of this for me to get ready and go out and do that. Because, when I get in the car and drive, I need to kind of, prepare myself before I do that. So I can't just be like, oh, I'm going to jump in the car and go somewhere. Like, I wish it was like that. I miss the days when I could just do that. But yeah, I'm going to have a few things to prepare. Plus, I got to clean some stuff up. I mean, just by virtue of sitting in my driveway and the stupid spotted lanternflies, who, by the way, keep trying to have sex all over my car. They're like, when I see them, I'm like, ooh, I hate them. They're so, and then the fact that they have the absolute gall to try to reproduce in front of me is like, I'm not having any of that. It was bad enough when the squirrels used to try to do that on my porch. I was like, really? Does this look like an appropriate place for that? But in any case, but it's interesting because we are, okay. First of all, I'm going to tell today's ghost story, which, for October. This one is going to be a true life one, so it's not going to be as much fun as some of the other ones. So just, but it's still an interesting story. I know I've told it on a couple of different podcasts. And so I'm going to tell you that story, and you can see what you think of it. But then I'm going to talk about the topic for today, which is going to be fidelity. Okay. And there's a good reason why I'm bringing this topic up. Like I said, with the solar eclipse in Libra, there's been a big focus on relationships and relationship discussions. Also, all the readings I've done, I've only done Aries through Gemini so far. I'm doing Cancer through Virgo this morning. All of them are talking about fidelity. Actually, it's really interesting. The Aries reading showed basically that at least somebody who watches those videos is going to, like their dream relationship is right there. It's like, oh my God, the person for you is right there. but it's with the 9 of swords. It was like 10 of cups and then 9 of swords. But it's like, but you're so scared that and that the thing they were scared about was fidelity. And I also saw that there was also some inklings of this in the Taurus readings and a couple other places. I mean, this was for people looking for new relationships. Obviously, if you're already in one and you're secure, then, you know, that aspect of it's not for you. But, good morning, Suda. So we have all this, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about that concept, of fidelity, throughout the live stream. I'm gonna talk about that today. But first I'll tell you my ghost story. And my ghost story is, this one, as I said, is a true to life one. And, and by the way, you're in the class tonight. I'm going to be sending the link I'm going to make sure the link goes out this morning. I completely forgot to do that yesterday. So, okay, I'm umming today, trying to get my thoughts together. This is the ghost story that I have was when I was in graduate school. It was my first semester in graduate school, so I'm going to say this was in 2013. It was around March, April. I think it was March because it was actually an unusually warm March day. So I was reading material for one of my classes, and I was sitting out on my front porch, which is kind of sort of below us where I'm sitting right now. And I have a very small front porch, but some mornings I put a chair out there. I mean, I do have the thing so I can put my coffee down, or I can bring one of these tables down and I can sit down outside and I can read a book or I can do something. And I remember I was reading a book called The Paper Garden. It was for an art component of something that I was doing. And I was sitting reading this book. And by the way, this was midday. This was not like at night or anything like that. This was like the middle of the day. And people walk in front of my house. Okay. Now, as I did have a friend once who was a medium who had visited my house, and she was like, "Is everybody who walks in front of your house like alive?" And I'm like, "As far as I know." I mean, you know, like I said, most of the people that she would point to, I'd be like, "No, I know that person. No, I know that person." Like they were people that I knew, so they weren't dead people. But I do have a cemetery right here, and this is kind of a strange, you know, this property is borders the church property. Now the house, I should note that my house is not haunted. Okay, let me just tell people that. Any future buyers of this house know this house is not haunted. But sometimes you do see people walking in front, and some of them I recognize and some of them I don't. So this was a day when, now there's a guy who walked down the road, and I had never seen this guy before. He was tall, he was thin, he was pale, and he kind of had longish dark hair. And he was wearing a hoodie, he was wearing black jeans, and I remember looking at him thinking, you know, because that literally describes my type, you know, tall, longish dark hair, pale, like that's my thing. When I say tall, I mean taller than me. So I know there's people who they'll be like 5'11", and they're like, "I'm not tall." I'm like, yeah, compared to me, you are. So, anyway, So I was sitting there and I was watching Peter Steele. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure who he is. I have to go look. But in any case, I was sitting there, and you like same but blonde. Okay, yeah. I've never been big on blondes. I don't know. I mean, I have occasionally dated blondes, but I'm not really, I don't know. I don't know why. For me, with guys, I always tend to prefer the really, you know, tall, dark haired and pale, long dark hair and pale. So there was a guy looking like this walking down the street, and I just thought, you know, so of course that catches my attention, you know, and I just kind of looked up, and he looked at me and he smiled and he says, "Oh, hello," and he waves, and I said, "Oh, you know, hello," and I waved back at him, and he keeps walking down the street. Now, my house, my front porch is right on the road. Like it's not like I have a front yard. It's right on the road. And there's this tree that I think I took my picture. You can see there's this tree outside my window, this dead tree that the neighbor's sworn he's going to get rid of, but, you know, hasn't done it yet. And then if you walk down the street, there's the cemetery, and there's no big trees. There's no big, you know, there's sort of a bush over there, but not tall enough to obscure somebody who's like almost 6 foot tall. So this guy's walking down the street, and of course I've got my book, but I'm kind of watching as he goes down the street. And also I should note this was a time, right now there's a lot of overgrowth next to my house. This overgrowth was not there. There was nothing obscuring the view. This is important. Because as soon as he got to the cemetery gates, he literally just disappeared. Like, vanished into thin air. To where I was just like, what the actual, fill in the blank. So I got up, typo negative. Yeah, I had, oh, okay, that's who he is. Got it. Okay. Didn't recognize the name at first. I do know the band. I had gotten up and I went over to go look. Because I was like, okay, I don't want to make it like I'm following this guy, but and if I happen to see him, I'm just gonna be like, sorry, dude, it looked like you vanished into thin air. And so I walked down the road and I looked at it. I'm like, because if he was in the cemetery again, if he had gone in and I don't know, he got obscured by something and I somehow didn't see where he went, I would have seen him at that point. He just wasn't there at all. And I'm like, okay, and there's nowhere to go at the end of the road unless he's going to go jump over the hill onto Route 31. But even then, it's like he wasn't going to, it was like he was at the cemetery gate and he was just gone. And, I'm saying this guy's probably like maybe in his early 20s. Like he wasn't like, I was just like, okay, this is so weird. So I kind of filed that away. Now, several months later, it was in November of that year. I remember I was working my usual crazy grad school, 2 jobs, all that kind of stuff. And I was driving home from work late one night. It was about 10 p.m. And as I was coming down my road, which starts as sort of 2 lanes and then it becomes 1 lane, as I'm driving, all of a sudden I see this guy again. Okay? He's walking down the road the same direction, and he turns and he looks at my car and he looks at me. And there was just something about the way he looked that it made me actually really uneasy. And I was like, why is this guy walking down the road? Where did he come from in the middle of the night? Because also in between, I had asked my neighbors, I said, yeah, there's this tall, I explained, I said, because I knew that sometimes there were renters across the street from my one neighbor. I said, oh, maybe he's one of the renters in that house. Maybe that's where he came from. And my neighbor's like, no. He's like, I see the people coming out of the house all the time. I've never seen a guy who looks like that. And so my neighbors had no idea who this person was. And yes, and again, people might take a walk through town or something, so they don't necessarily have to come from this part of town. But he seemed to come from one end of the church by the parking lot just to the other. And so he turned and he looked at me, my car, and I was a little nervous because I have to park my car, get out, get my post, and then go into the house. And again, there's street lights, so I can see, it's dark, but I can see. And so I park my car and I get out and I look because I know where he was standing and where he was walking. And once again, he was just literally gone. And I was like, that's just really, there's just something really like off about this. So I don't know now whether there's a rational explanation for that. Maybe maybe it'll turn out that he was a person, but I never saw this guy again. Okay. I've never seen him around. Never saw him again. And I'm like, that's just really odd to me. Like, why is this person randomly showing up? And by the way, renters in that same house had turned over at that time. So if he had been a friend of somebody living there or something, there were different people living in that house at the time. So why was this guy here? And it wasn't like there was a car anywhere, because there's nowhere for anybody to park. And you're not allowed to park in the church lot because of, Mr. Territorial, get off my lawn, pastor who runs the church. But there was no place for anybody to be. And I'm like, and it's just like he just appears there and then he just disappears by the cemetery gate. So, and again, that's the only 2 times, and that was like more than 10 years ago now that I saw that. But of course it made an impression on me because it goes back to the whole thing of when you see something and that's what I'm saying. Your mind immediately tries to say, okay, what's the rational explanation here? This is a solid person in front of me. It's not like they were some filmy mist going by. This is a solid person walking past me. How do they just disappear? How does that happen? I mean, it's just, is there a portal to another dimension? Although that's another whole story. There does seem to be something that opens up on the horizon there. That's very weird. And I don't know that I would class it as a UFO, but it appears. It appeared yesterday and doesn't appear consistently all the time. It is right on the horizon. I think it's actually over the reservoir, which is just down the hill. So, anyway, it's weird. Now Pantera Cemetery gates in my head. You're welcome. So yeah, it's But it's weird because, yeah, because I live here and I don't tend to think of cemeteries as haunted places because even though we only see the spooky graveyard and different things, I mean, that's what I've said. If you're dead, like, why would you go, like, hang around your tombstone, you know? She's laughing, yeah. It was, yeah. So, it's just odd. I mean, and I walk in the cemetery all the time. And I walk in there in the middle of the night, too. I mean, I don't care. I don't care what the pastor thinks, because I'm just like, you know, I want to go, like, yeah, whatever. Tell me to leave. Technically, I think he could make a case that you shouldn't be there after sundown, but it's practically in my front yard. So I do go there. So, good tune though, could be worse. Yeah, there could be a lot worse, I think. So that's my little ghost story for today. So, you know, take that for what you will. I've still been trying to puzzle it out over this years but there's really no answer to it. So the guy could have been a ghost. It could have been, there could have been some other weird explanation. Maybe he just disappeared into another dimension. I have no clue. So, or maybe one day somebody will come up with a rational explanation for it. So that's my little ghost story for the day, or spooky story. Okay, so moving on with our topic for today. Now, as I mentioned, if anybody who joined later, the topic I have is fidelity, and the reason I want to talk about this, it's in your head now too. It'll be in mine next. The reason that I was talking about, talking about this particular topic, as I mentioned, is because I have, okay, like I said, there's this whole thing with this Libra energy, and the fact that relationship issues are coming to the fore. But fidelity is a big one. And fidelity, I notice, is an issue. There tends to be two main situations when fidelity becomes an issue in a relationship. One is if you have a person who's been burned very badly. Like, let's just say they were in a relationship that was committed, everything seemed fine and great, but then, you know, the other partner maybe starts to pull away, maybe starts to act weird, and then you come to find out, and then they just turn around and say, yeah, well, I have somebody else and I'm leaving. And so that person's left broken-hearted, devastated. You know, they they thought they had something good here. Maybe they're upset with themselves because they're thinking, why did I not see the signs of this? You know, that kind of a thing. The other time that you will see somebody who is overly concerned about fidelity, okay? So that's going to be like when somebody, like if you start dating somebody and they say, look, my last, you know, girlfriend, whatever, you know, cheated on me and my heart was broken and I'm really sensitive about that. Okay, so there could be, there's that kind of a situation. And it goes the other way too. Oftentimes it's that way with women. I've actually had men who I've known, like going to concerts and stuff, who have known me, who have unfriended me in different places because they've gotten married to a partner who is just like absolutely paranoid that every female that they know is some other woman, which, okay, I'll talk about that in a minute too. And that's happened to me in at least one case. And it's like, well, it's unfortunate, but I understand this person is trying to, you know, I don't know. That's an issue that has to kind of be worked on there. But the other time that you may have a spouse or a partner who's overly concerned with fidelity is when they are not being faithful themselves. I've also been in the equation where it's not happened to me personally, but I have had friends who I've been out, like, I don't know, having coffee with them or whatever. And then all of a sudden their partner is texting them, where are you? Who are you with? I want pictures of who you're with. Like, and this is not, and by the way, we're not talking about women who in any way, shape or form would you think are out like hot to trying to pick up guys or anything like that. And it was constant. And I remember this person saying to me, yeah, you know, he does this all the time now. In my mind, I'm going, he's cheating on her. He's absolutely cheating because that's a behavior that happens. And as it turns out, that's exactly what was going on. And so there's two ways to look at that. Either way, the problem with focus is on fidelity. Okay, when we focus on fidelity. Now, mind you, where am I coming from on this? All right, so I'll tell you a little bit of my astrology, since we got a lot of astrology people here. My Lilith is in the 5th house in Scorpio. Okay, real dangerous spot there, and I think Uranus is there as well. So it's, yeah, okay. And we all know, fifth house, Leo energy, being seen, love affairs, things like that. My seventh house, though, is Capricorn. Okay. And Jupiter is there. Jupiter and Capricorn in the seventh house. My moon, though, is in the second house. And as April Shelley, who had done my chart at one point, she said, she did my Lilith chart, and she said, that's really interesting. Ah, yes, Lilith discussion. Yes, and Lilith is going to come into this discussion for sure. Because and my second house is Leo. But okay, so what she said, it's really interesting because I'm just going to come out and say it. Lilith in the fifth house is really kiki, right? It's really, yay. Sam saying yay. It's kind of somebody with, let's just say someone with a sexual imagination. And the thing is, for me, that comes out in my writing. I write stuff that I kind of look at it and go, do I actually want to show this to people? And where does this come from? But that's it. I have the Lilith and Scorpio in the fifth house. However, that she says, I remember her telling me, she says, yeah, because that could give you that kind of a vibe. She's like, but that second house moon, because obviously Lilith is a position that appears in your chart with respect to your moon, and it's usually a contrary position. Because the second house moon is somebody who wants stability, wants security, wants commitment, wants things. And the reality is that that's the kind of person that I am. I don't, a lot of the men who proposition me are men who are already in relationships with other women. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because my feeling is, if I was in a relationship with somebody, okay, and with a guy, and one of my female friends or other females around me were trying to put the make on my partner, I would be really, really, I mean, that's like, that would be like fire breathing for me. And like, that is just not okay for me. And so my feeling is, look, even if let's just hypothetically say it was a guy who I was attracted to, and let's just say maybe I didn't even like their partner. It doesn't matter. That's their partner. That's kind of the way I feel about it. And I feel always like, and even when I was married, I had men like at work and stuff who would like be like, oh, so you want to go out and things like that. And I was just kind of like, and mind you, I couldn't stand my husband, but I was like, but I'm committed to him. I made this commitment. Okay. I made the commitment. And I'm not willing to break that commitment. In spite of the fact, in fact, they said, if I'm gonna pick up with people, then I'm going to get divorced, which is exactly what I did. So it's just, and not because I wanted to pick up with other people necessarily, but just because the marriage was starting to feel, there was just, it had reached a point where there was no respect left, at least not from my point of view. So I had walked out of that situation, but when I was married to him, I mean, that was, infidelity was not an issue. Okay. Now what's very interesting though is, but again, I have been in situations where I have had men question my fidelity, and unfortunately it's because they've been interested in somebody else. And I find that, and actually, like I said, one guy actually had the nerve to say to me, he was like, well, I mean, I think you're cute, but she's actually beautiful. And I was like, oh, okay. Is that how you feel? Get out. I mean, you don't like that because you feel like you're being compared unfavorably to somebody else. Like you don't measure up. And that's actually kind of the point of a lot of this. And this is why the fidelity conversation, even understanding that in a relationship, yes, if you have a partner who you love and you're committed to, yeah, exactly. You want that person to be, to be faithful to you. And also but the thing is, we live in a big world and we do all kinds of work, and you're going to meet both male and female people. It can't be like, okay, if you're female and married, you can only talk to other females, right? And similarly, if you're male and married, it's not like you're only going to talk to other males. There's going to be other women around, and maybe even some of these people are going to be friends, So you can't, but to say to your partner, well, you and I are in a relationship now, and okay, I'm not in a relationship now, but if I was, if somebody said to me, oh, well, you can't have any male friends now, and it's like that, there's an inherent problem with that, even if we assume that person has fidelity issue number one, okay, which is where they've been burned, they're scared this is going to be a repeat pattern. First of all, it betrays an insecurity. For some reason, they think that they're lesser than you. Okay. And okay, one of two things tends to happen in those situations. One is that either they become very controlling and say, like, I don't want you talking to this person. I don't want you. I actually have a short story about it in my very first collection that came out in 2010 called, it was written in 2010, but I think it actually came out like in 2018, called Archetype Possession. And I have one of the first stories I wrote in that series called Senex. And it's actually about an older man who is married to a much younger woman. Like a woman in her, like, he's like in his, like, 60s, and she's like in like her like late 20s or something. And but she loves him, and they're married. But the story is literally about how he is so sure that this perfect relationship is going to fall apart that he literally goes to great lengths to try to control her, and he ends up destroying the relationship. Okay, because he goes to lengths that are actually almost criminal in this story to try to keep this person in their place. And some people, I wasn't dating, but I was kind of involved in a complicated situation with somebody who, by the way, had a partner who was older than me, and a lot of people thought the story was about him, and I'm like, no, the story actually had nothing to do with him. But although his was interesting, he was somebody who was quite well known, who had some celebrity, and he had done something I'm not going to say the name of who it is, but he was doing an event in Bath in England. And afterwards, I was invited back to his local. Now, mind you, I knew he had a partner, so it wasn't like, it was like, okay, so you have a partner. I mean, I still liked the work that he did and all this kind of stuff, and I was still there. But I remember when I came in, it was like his manager came over to me, kind of looking really nervous when his partner came up to him, and I was just like, okay, I got it, I was like looking at him like, what? I just got a drink, and I went down, and I sat at the table with his son and some other people, and we were just all talking. And I remember he came over to the table, and I was talking with, he came over a couple times, and he kept looking at me. And then I was talking to his manager, and his manager and I were having an argument. You'll appreciate this, Pat. We were having an argument about Canada. And it was because he was talking about how he thought, like, he seemed to like Toronto, and and he thought Ottawa was like the most boring city in the world. And I was like, well, I was just in Ottawa a couple of years ago, and actually, I think it's kind of a cool city. I think there's a lot of cool stuff there. I mean, yeah, there's like no nightclubs and things like that, but I think it's a pretty cool city. And so we're having this conversation, and this said celebrity person comes and sits down, and he's looking from one person to the other. And then all of a sudden he interjects, well, I've been to Canada. I was like, oh. And he said, yes, to visit his partner's name's relatives. And he kind of looks at me. And I just looked at him like this, and I just started to laugh. And I said, remind me how old you are again. And the look on his face, he was like, and I said to him, and he was just, and the first thing I said to him was, oh, that's nice. And he went, like, he just like he was, okay. The point of this exchange is that this was a guy who was not planning on getting involved with me, but wanted to see if I was going to be jealous. And he would do that frequently. We would go places, and there would be other women around, and he would basically try to say something demeaning to me and something, oh, well, look at her. She's really beautiful. Like, yeah, guilty conscience plus testing the waters. Yeah. And I'm just, but that was his whole thing. Like, are you like he was an older man, so thinking like, oh, well, are you actually attracted to me? And once he kind of got the idea that maybe I was, it was like, then it's like his ego just went through the roof. So I was just like, okay, I'm out. This is, you turned into the a-hole that you actually, to be completely fair to him, that he told me he was right at the very beginning. He's like, yeah, there's the face I put on for people. He says, the person I am, he says, I don't even like the person that I am. And I was like, well, okay, at least you know yourself. So anyway, that was that story. But the problem with Fidelity, or the way that Fidelity tends to be construed, think also about the woman who is single, and let's just say she's out like with her friends, or she's out at a bar, or she's out doing something, and a guy approaches her who she's not interested in. And this guy starts like trying to put the make on her, and she goes, oh, so what do women often have to do? Oh, I have a boyfriend. Even if they don't. And because there's men who won't take no for an answer unless they think you belong to somebody else. And that's the inherent problem with the way that Fidelity is constructed. in a relationship, I've said this a million times, it's based on respect and trust. If you're concerned about somebody's fidelity, then you don't trust them. And when it comes to somebody, now sometimes maybe there's cases where that's warranted, but if you have a partner who's never really given you any reason to doubt your trust in them, then this is more about control, because it's more, okay, put in the simplest possible terms, worries about infidelity are actually being threatened by sovereignty. In other words, if you're not willingly giving up your sovereignty for somebody, like when you get married, when you put a ring on it, right? The idea is that you no longer are supposed to have sovereignty. You're supposed to submit. And if they think that you are confident, independent, have male friends, have this and that, then clearly you're not going to be faithful. And what that's code for, which they need to realize, and I'm not saying all guys who think this way are douchebags, but it's just kind of like, but I think it's something that's ingrained in the patriarchal culture that they have to step back and look at and be like, you're basically saying that, no, none of us, there's no reason that you have to submit to somebody. No, heck no, run, right. Right, but you'll see that a lot of people have that kind of idea about what it means, like you're a possession, because that's the idea. I'm married to you, I've made a commitment, that means you're my possession. And that can go either way, honestly. But it's like, no, if you don't trust your partner to have, friends of the opposite sex, then that says something about either your trust of that person or about your attitude towards sovereignty. And that does go back, Sam, to Lilith. If we think about the Lilith story in the Talmud, okay, and people kind of make a joke out of this, and they think of it like it's a joke. But the Lilith story is, Adam, okay, Lilith is Adam's first wife, right, in the Garden of Eden. And when it comes to having sex, Lilith wants to be, Adam, she wants to be on top. And Adam says, no, I have to be on top. And she says, why do I have to be underneath you? And he says, because it's your woman and it's your job to submit. And she's just like, heck it is. And she gets up and she complains to Yahweh, And he says, well, yeah, actually, I think it is your job to submit. So she's like, boo. And it's weird, because she says, it's weird though, because Yahweh is supposed to be the God, but she recites the holy name of God and then vanishes. And I'm like, that's interesting, but that God supposedly just told her, I don't know, this gets into demiurge territory for me. But, it's your job to submit. And she's just like, hell it is. And because her thing is not so much that he has to submit to her, which is the way it's almost construed, because that's what they always think, like, oh, well, then that woman's going to dominate you and she's going to put you down and make you feel bad. And I'm like, why would you assume that she would do that? Same thoughts, yep. Why would you assume that she would do that? Like, if your partner's, okay, I actually also, this is not a new concept, by the way. If we look at the Arthurian legend of the Loathly Lady, which is not only in Arthurian legend, but that's one of the most prominent examples in Dame Ragnell. Okay, Dame Ragnell is when King Arthur goes off and he encounters this knight in this forest. He does hunting in this forest that he is not supposed to, and then the knight or the giant, this giant who comes to him, who supposedly this is his thing, and King Arthur has violated, whatever rule it is by coming in and hunting in this forest, threatens to cut his head off. And of course, Arthur kind of bargains with him, and he says, okay, look, he says, I'll spare your life if you're going to come back here 1 year to the day, but you need to answer the question, what is it that women want? Okay? So Arthur, and I swear to God, when I tell this story, I never remember if it's, there's two knights that their name begin with a G. There's Galahad, and then there's, Gawain. Those are the two. And I always forget which of the two it is in this story. I have to literally go back and reread it because I get them mixed up in my head. And I feel like it might be Galahad. So, and he's of course the most handsome of the young knights, right? So, him and Galahad go out and they're trying to get this answer. They ask women different things, but then, and they're not really quite getting an answer. So then this really, really ugly old hag comes out of the forest and goes up to Arthur. She goes, I know your question. She goes, and I know the answer to your question. She says, and I'm willing to give it to you. She says, but there's a price to the hag figure in nature, right? She goes, there's a price. She says, if I give you the answer, I want to be married to Galahad. Okay, the most beautiful of the knights. And again, it could be Gawain, I could be wrong. But in any case, I'm going to be married to him. So Arthur's like, and Arthur, of course, wanting to save his own neck, goes, okay. But then he has to kind of break it to his nephew that he kind of made this promise. But of course, Galahad, just being a faithful knight, just says, okay, well, you know what? If that's what you need to do to say, you're my king and my son, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. So he ends up being married to this woman. And then when she comes in, people are horrified at the look of this woman. They're just like, ooh, she just seems like, she's kind of like drooling and has half her teeth out, and she just. And of course, after they have the wedding, he has to do his conjugal duty, right? And he kind of puts it off for a bit, and then he's like, no, I promised that this is what I was going to do, and I'm just going to do it. So he gets into bed with her, and he gives her a kiss. And as soon as he does that, she changes into the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. And she says to him, she says, okay, and she explains to him that she's been under a curse. Okay. And of course, and so what is the Hag of the Forest? We were just doing this class on Baba Yaga, right? What is this Hag of the Forest, this vicious witch? But she's actually a beautiful woman, right? And so she says, I can either be beautiful in the bedroom with you and ugly out in public, or beautiful in public and ugly in the bedroom. So which do you want? And he thinks about it for a moment, and he says, you know what? He says, this isn't up to me. This is your choice. And she says something to the effect of like, sovereignty given, a sovereignty returned. She said, now I'm beautiful with you all the time. And the point of that story is that the woman is beautiful because she has her sovereignty. And because she has her sovereignty, he also has her fidelity. You know what I mean? When women feel confined, when they feel like I just did a podcast on the Diarra Gadua about a beautiful woman who is in love with this boy beneath her station, but her father marries her to the highest bidder, basically, who's this disgusting old man who then locks her in a tower and treats her like she's a possession. So she starves herself to death, and then she becomes this vampire, and the first two people she kills are her father and her husband. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. You take somebody's sovereignty away, and that's when they become the wicked monster. You leave a person with their sovereignty. Giving someone their sovereignty doesn't mean you don't care about them. It means you respect and trust them enough to recognize that you're in a relationship and that you're not going to do anything to intentionally hurt each other. Too bad the world isn't wired that way. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. That's what the real relationship is. Real relationship is saying that both people have sovereignty, really. Both people have sovereignty, and it's not like I have to do something to control you. It's not about who's going to dominate the other one. That's never what it should be about. And I can tell you that's never what I've been about in relationships. I've always been somebody, but I have always had somebody who feels like threatened by the fact that, I do stuff, I have degrees, whatever. And it's like they have to put me down and because I have to be beneath them somehow. And I'm like, why is this the pattern? And so people say to me, why don't you really date? I'm like, that's why. That's why. Why are we repeating this pattern? I would rather be alone than be in that pattern. Because I don't want to have to, I'm not, being in a relationship with you goes both ways, and it goes both ways, yes, absolutely. There's no reason why I should have to yield my sovereignty to be in a relationship with you, And that doesn't mean, and when I say that, by the way, that doesn't mean, I'm free to sleep with whoever I want. If I've made a commitment saying, yeah, I'm only going to sleep with you, then I've made that commitment, right? I haven't been able to talk to my bestie for 2 years because his Barbie doll wife is intimidated by me. Yeah, it's interesting, right? And it can go both ways. And a lot of times you see it with women who are jealous. But it also, I've seen it with men who are jealous too. And again, sometimes it's because they're cheating, and other times it's because they've been burned as well. And what we have to understand is this is not, the ideal relationship is not one in which one is the possessive of the other, where one is dependent on the other. I mean, we talk about codependence as a bad thing, right? Codependence is a bad thing. You don't need to be, you're together because you want to be. Control that kills the spark, right? Because it's kind of like if you see a beautiful butterfly and you go and you put it in a jar and you suffocate it, it's going to die, right? It's the same idea. The idea is it's the best when it's allowed to, it's the prettiest when it's allowed to kind of float around. And if you try to continually control it, you're not that, again, it goes back to yielding control. We're supposed to yield control in life, and you yield control in relationships. It's not like you're trying to force you're gonna, or the women, or on the other hand, you'll have women who be like, I'm gonna change him. What do you mean, change what? Like, they are who they are, you are who they are. And real love is about the idea that two people accept each other for who they are. And that doesn't mean everything's gonna be like perfect and hunky-dory all the time, and that we're all going to be, our life's going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. Because life isn't sunshine and rainbows all the time, But the idea is that you're willing to go through it together and to work on things, And yeah, relationships take work. Good relationships can take work. There's going to be days when you drive each other crazy, and then there's going to be days when you really get on together. And but that's just what I've always seen. It's always like people look. And especially if you're a woman who's educated in any way, it's almost like, oh, that's an immediate threat. Like you're out of my league, and the only way I can be with you is to show, because otherwise they're gonna look too beta or some nonsense like that. I don't even know. It's like it's not about this whole alpha male crap is just exactly that. It's crap. And men who just say, I don't understand why women don't want to be in relationships anymore, because you need to stop playing that game. That's not a game. And even guys who are not trying to be alpha males, who are decent guys, they can fall into this trap too, because they think that, and that was like with this guy I was telling you about. In other words, I'm going to put you down and try to make you jealous. I want to see you like cry over me. I want to see you indicate that you're insecure and you're unhappy about the fact that I'm with somebody. And I'm like, that's a really terrible way to be, because that doesn't indicate that you have any respect for me at all. And that's why I kind of walk away from those kind of things. So anyway, I felt that came up this morning, and I felt like, nagging is disgusting. Nagging, it's just, it's begging is disgusting is probably what I think you mean there. Yeah, it's, I don't beg anybody for anything, and nobody should be begging me for anything either. It's like, what is the problem with just, you're attracted to each other and you can get into a relationship and negative comments. Yeah, being supportive of each other. But I've always run into that. So I kind of got to a point after a while where I was like, okay, well, you know what? If every time I get into a relationship with somebody, no matter how much the guy seems to want to be involved, and then it's going to turn into, because also sometimes I think they idealize too, and they think like, you're going to come in and you're going to solve all my problems like my ex did. And I'm like, that's never an expectation you should have of your partner. Never. I mean, it's not possible. There are no saviors. Either way, women shouldn't look to that in a man, and a man shouldn't look to that in a woman. There's these societal expectations that, again, it's this patriarchal nonsense that kind of has to go away. So yeah, I get the idea of fidelity. If you married each other and you've said, okay, no, we want to just be with each other, fine, understood. And truthfully, that's the way I operate. I'm like, I don't want to be. I have been in situations where I don't want to be somebody's other woman. Okay? I'm not interested in that. And I don't think it's fair to the woman, even if I don't like the woman. My feeling is that's who you chose to be with, and it's your responsibility to get out of that relationship if it's not one you want to be in. Okay? If you're staying in it because, it provides the money, it provides this, and provides... Okay, well then that's what you've chosen. That's what you've chosen. Don't go looking out other places. My husband can't solve a word jumble, nonetheless my problems. Is what Joanne's saying here. Well, that's it. Who will save your soul when you can't save your own? Yeah, right. That Jewel song, right? From the 90s. Yeah. You have to, the best relationships are the ones where each person is solid in themselves. You're not looking to the other person to give you that boost, right? That you are... obviously you should lift each other up. It shouldn't be a case of, oh God, here comes my partner again, and now my day is ruined, which was pretty much the way it got to be with my husband after a while. It shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't see that person and immediately get tense. That person should be somebody like when you've had a bad day that you can talk to. It should be somebody when there's problems that you work on solving it together. Not that, what one's you yelling at each other over, you should be this and you should be that. That doesn't, it's a matter of, and sometimes there is arguing, but, work together. It should be about working together. So anyway, we're at quarter of, so I want to quickly do our reading. Okay, totality is our first card. Okay, this is the Five of Wands. And what is the five? Okay, totality is about being totally focused on one person, one situation. It's the trapeze, I have to put my focus on one thing at a time. And so, but as we know in the regular traditional decks, this is a card of competition. It's that jockeying, that competition, which is often at the center of the whole infidelity thing. Who are you competing with, right? And where's your total focus? And the inner feeling of which you're unaware, it's exactly what I've just said, the fighting card. You know, I have to fight for something. I have to defend what's mine. I have to defend my territory, right? That's the inner feeling of which people are unaware. And the external feeling of maybe which you are aware is mind, okay? Mind is when the mind gets involved. And so you see somebody, okay, well, I'm just going to stick to the theme that we have for today. And let's just say let's just say a man sees a woman that he thinks is beautiful and maybe that he thinks is very smart. Maybe he thinks, oh, she's, you know, she's smarter than me, or she's very attractive, so she's probably got all these men around her, and that probably means that she's sleeping with all these men, and that probably means that she's, and you know, so there's catastrophizing that's going on without actually, that is completely non-factual. It's just the mind creating a story, and creating this battle that probably does not need to exist. Okay, this is not a battle. This is not a battle for who's going to be on top. Also interesting as a side note, I always think it's interesting that now there's a phrase I'm seeing now about women in relationships and men wanting to know the quote unquote body count. I think that's a really interesting phrase for how many other men have you slept with. That it's a body count, like it's a kill. Just similarly, like you might talk about men who are players as making a conquest. Why is this about fighting? Why is this about conquest? Why is it? I mean, I understand the idea. We always talk about having to win somebody over. It's like, okay, yeah. I mean, you want to, if you really want to be with somebody, you want to show them the kind of person that you are. But why is this about like conquest? Because conquest implies that there's a loser and that loser has to submit to the winner. Why are we playing this game, right? Okay. So 9 of Cups. Now it's interesting. This is coming up as the laziness card. So this is, so it's interesting. And I think in this particular case, we're talking about, when you're talking about narratives, and we talked about this not even just with regard to this particular subject, about how when our mind recognizes that we should do something new, we kind of backslide immediately into the old. We still, because that's what we're used to, that's what's familiar, that's what's comfortable. But the old is kind of breaking up here in the background. You know, this may feel comfortable, but it's crumbling, it's falling apart, right? So, yeah, so this is something that is falling apart. And the laziness aspect of it is the idea that it takes less work to just stick with the normal script. And honestly, when it comes to a relationship situation, that's something that can go either way. I mean, you could have one partner that understands this and is willing to do the work, and you could have another who doesn't. Or who just feels like, okay, I've gotten into a relationship because I want this person to just kind of carry me, you know? But there's a lot of this here around all of this, but the outcome card is the Magician. It's the existence card, okay? The idea of, again, go out and look at this, understand the beauty of life. Enjoy, when it comes to love, enjoy the beauty of that. Enjoy, you know, we lose that so quickly because our mind gets involved and starts trying to dissect what's going on. And it's like, you know what? If it's there, it's just there. Like, let it be there. Like, why, you know, if you have a good moment, if you have a good feeling about somebody, like, just let it be there. Don't be questioning, you know, well, you know, what kind of a person am I being by doing this? Or what's this? Or what's that? You know, if you're going to keep chopping everything up into little pieces, you're not really going to, you're not allowing it to be what it is. And existence is just kind of like, let something be what it is, you know, let's let something be, you know, where it is and what it is. So, anyway, that's our reading for today. That was my topic for today. I felt kind of compelled to talk about that, especially given all the readings I'm doing for the week. I should have readings up on time this week. I should have them up by tomorrow. And as I've indicated, there's no live stream tomorrow morning because I have to go pick up my car. People are in my class tonight. I will be sending you the link this morning. And yeah, and so some of you I will see later, and everybody else I'll probably see Tuesday-ish. So I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. And yeah, we'll connect up again soon. So take care. Have a wonderful Sunday. Yes, much love to you guys too. And oh, you're welcome. And yeah, and so I'll be back for Cattonia live stream on Monday, so some of you might see me there. Well, will I be there? Yeah, I will be there for that. So anyway, take care. Have a good rest of your day.